I thank you for joining another week of the Served podcast with me, Andy Roddick. Straight off the top, we are going to give thanks to our Served Supporter Club. I love doing this so much, Mike, that we're never going to do it again after today. I do like doing it, but we will be on Tennis Channel T2, which I can't exactly just start naming off people, strangers that are supportive on air. But this week, huge thank you to David F., Russell S., Mary Kate B., Jackie C., Adam S., and Jessica W., who donated to the Andy Roddick Foundation by virtue of them supporting the Served Supporter Club. So we appreciate you. And the next segment is going to be Racket Rundown, brought to you by... Nobody has sponsored this segment yet, but I'll do it anyways. I'm going to do it anyways. We have an unbelievable interview in this show with Max Eisenbud, who is agent to the stars, Sharapova, Li Na, now Emma Raducanu. You don't often get the level of honesty that Max gives about how the sausage is made behind the scenes and what his strategies are, how he reacts to triumphs, to tough times. It just gives you a behind-the-peak look at the entire universe of what is in the undertow of the matches that you see on TV. So fascinating, unbelievable to hear the stories of where he was and what happened the 2 months before Maria broke through in 2004 at Wimbledon, the 2 months afterwards, the rest of her career, hooking up with Li Na to be her agent, dealing with the intricacies of the Chinese government and how that affected what she was paid. It's just, he was a complete open book. I've always been a huge fan of Max, and the interview, I was so into it. I was blown away with his candor, and you will learn a lot about how to be a tennis agent, what all entails, the level of detail, the things they have to think about, peeking around the corners. So that is an awesome interview. I'm going to get through the results, the Racket Roundup, brought to you by nobody right now. Congrats to Sebastian Baez in Rio, winning that ATP 500 over Navone in the final, who was a qualifier. So lots of qualifiers and wild cards kind of making runs. And it's not often you look at a tournament and say the biggest storyline involved nobody in the final. Fonseca, João Fonseca, super hyped, won the Junior US Open last year. Going into the tournament, he was going to attend University of Virginia. I'll take a bet with anyone that he is not going there anymore. Sorry, Andres Pedroso, but I think your prize recruit is worth more than you could pay in NIL. But this kid can play. You know, kind of that long string bean type body that we're seeing on tour right now, but solid off of both sides. Big wins over Arthur Fils, which is always weird when you're Fils and you're playing someone younger than you. And then another win on clay against Christian Garin, who's been a top 15 player, especially on that surface. Ended up losing to Navone in 3 sets in the quarterfinals, but one to watch. João Fonseca, I was really impressed watching him hit through it this week in Rio, and they are starved for a superstar. I saw the standing O that went on for minutes that they gave our beloved Guga Kuerten, well-deserved, when he was down there. One of the coolest, nicest guys that you will ever meet in tennis, and it looks like we might have someone who might be able to at least approach Guga's shadow a little bit with Fonseca. A lot happening in Dubai. Going in, the biggest names involved: Kogogov, Iga Swiatek, Rybakina, Sabalenka was in the draw too. Just huge names, which obviously means that Paolini beats Kalinskaya in the final. Do you love tennis? Kalinskaya goes from qualifying, takes out Goff in the quarters, Swiatek in the semis, only to lose a tough, heartbreaking 3-setter to Paolini, who now enters the top 15 for the first time in her career. And don't you worry, Mike Hayden, something good will happen for Italian tennis this year. I'm just telling you, the year's young, but have faith. Don't give up yet. They're going to win something. Things are going to go well. For Sinner, maybe he might win a slam. Paolini might win the biggest tournament of her life and into the top 15. So congrats to her. Well done in a stacked Dubai field. In Doha, Karen Khachanov taking out another youngster, Mensik, 18 years old, same body type, that 6'4", 184 kind of slinger. Everyone's like a rubber band now. Good job, Karen Khachanov. We've seen him for many years. Just a uber professional, makes runs at slams, has made the tail end of a bunch of slams. In Los Cabos, Jordan Thompson taking out Casper Ruud in the final. The match that was full of drama. It was like a Housewives episode. It was Jordan Thompson in the semis against Alex Zverev, who blew a huge lead. Set and 4-1 up. Jordan Thompson getting run out of the building and hung on somehow, find a way to win that match. And congrats to him on his title in Los Cabos. I am not going to take any more of your time with this opening because we have a great conversation. So we'll bring in Max Eisenbud. All right, welcome back to Served. We are on. I think this is going to be a really cool conversation. I think the goal when we started this podcast was to do something a little differentiated, to show you different areas of the tennis universe, how they operate, what it looks like behind the scenes, not just when you tune in and see a live match and it's a two-person booth down to the action, and then we exit, we say goodbye, and everyone kind of says some version of the same thing in analysis. And I'm excited about the conversation we have today. We have on my good friend Max Eisenbud, who I have known for 25 years now, and got to see his rise in his profession. Obviously, agent to the stars, Maria Sharapova, Li Na, now Emma Raducanu, amongst others. So I'm excited about this. I've known, like I said, I've known Max for a long time, but I don't know the answers to a lot of the questions that I have written down. So I'm going to learn in lockstep with the rest of you today. Max, thanks for being on, man. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Andy. It's a great pleasure. I was thinking today, coming in to the office, how many match points I watched you in your career waiting for Sharapova to go on after you played.
Well, that's good because I was generally known as a fast player. I didn't really mess around too much between points, so I guess you could follow someone worse, but hopefully I won a fair share of those. I've given a quick rundown in the opening of kind of your career and your accomplishments and the way that you've been kind of able to steward some of our best champions. But give me a quick run through, just kind of basic stuff. How did you even get into tennis, and how does one even approach becoming a tennis agent?
Good question. I played tennis growing up. I was a nationally ranked junior tennis player, believe it or not. It's hard to look at me now and think that's possible, but once there was a day, and I was ranked like top 100 in the country, lost first at Kalamazoo, and got a scholarship to play at Purdue University, and a great experience there playing in the Big Ten, and read a book, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School by Mark McCormick, and learned who Mark McCormick was. And any of your listeners out there that want to get into becoming an agent, that's a great place to start. Googling Mark McCormick and learning. He's the first ever sports agent. Was Arnold Palmer's was his first client of a famous handshake, and an industry was born. So I just became obsessed with IMG and wanted to work there, and I wasn't looking at any other companies, and it took me a long time, and I was at the time sending faxes to Cleveland, Ohio, their headquarters, please hire me. I was showing up at the Miami Open and tournaments and just hustling and trying to beg and plead them to hire me.
Love it.
And and then I finally, after in 1999, they agreed to hire me. And I had a lot of luck right away in the beginning. And I think it's pretty important because I was supposed to start my career in Cleveland, Ohio, and I got a place, rented a place, and I was supposed to start in March. And about 2 weeks before, they called me and said, listen, we don't want you to come to Cleveland. We want you to go down to IMG Academy. There's a lot of young players down there. They're driving us nuts. They're calling the agents all the time. They're not happy. And I went down there and met 11-year-old Maria Sharapova. And I tell the story all the time that if they didn't move me to Bradenton, some other idiot would have been managing Sharapova's career. So that was one of the lucky things. I got there. She was 11. I was still playing good tennis. I was hitting with her. They had all sorts of issues, visa issues, and I just was in the right place in the right time and just was doing minor things, booking their hotels, doing their visas, all the little things to make their life easier. And, having beers at night with her dad. And the next thing you know, he calls Cleveland and says, Max is my guy. And that's how it happened for me.
I love that. So you're saying, like, it's funny how life works. You truly believe that proximity at that moment probably got you your big break.
100%. If I go to Cleveland and I'm based in Cleveland and I'm not down in this environment in IMG Academy, and the first day I meet her and again, they were just having all sorts of issues. And I was just there at the right time cleaning up basic stuff and built the relationship, was still playing good tennis, and, it just happened from there.
It does make sense, though. Like, if you're the father of a phenom and this kind of hype machine, I remember seeing her at Bollettieri's, and people kind of point and say, well, that's the next one. And, she was worked hard and was kind of mean on the court already. Like, it was kind of common knowledge. But if in a world full of sharks, if someone comes in and is doing basic things like booking hotels and is just there for you, especially being a father now, you tend to want to give that person a shot, and trust is a big thing. So it seems like it's a leap, like he's taking a huge chance, but how do you teach trust?
No, totally. Those moments when they're 11 and 12 and 13 years old, and the little things that you're doing, waking up every day, making their life easier. And then, when boom, 6 years, she wins Wimbledon and your life changes, you're holding on to the people really tight that were there before because your life changes. And watching somebody's life change, I know you went through it. When you're watching somebody go through it, it's a very bizarre thing. I'm sure it's even more bizarre when it happens to yourself, but to watch somebody that you care about, the perception around them, everything changes. It was a very interesting time and a very hard time for her. And again, I was the trusted person that's been around her.
So you're beating me to my questions, which is great. That's kind of where you want to go. I do want to touch on one thing real quickly, though, because there's going to be a segment of people listening to this, and we're talking about an agent working with an 11-year-old girl. Like, how does that part of the business work? How early do you recruit someone, or is it just if they can play or if they can't? Walk me through kind of the trade-off there with, listen, am I recruiting an 8-year-old, or am I working for an 11-year-old? And that seems insane to anyone who hasn't been in that space, but kind of just walk us through that mindset.
I mean, that is just when you say it, when you say you're managing an 11-year-old, yeah. I mean, it just sounds, there's nothing good about it. It's such a outlier. It's such a rare thing. It's hard to explain because it's just not normal. Yes, she was very special, and there are players out there that we've signed at a young age, and those just happen. It's not something we want, but you got to remember, like, if you're winning Wimbledon at 17, like in 6 years, you have to be great at 11 to win in 6 years. It just doesn't just happen at 14. Something clicks. And there's just so many few players winning a Grand Slam at that age. So in that world at 11, you need some people around you that are going to help guide you and put you in the right direction. I mean, she had great tennis, great team. Her dad was turning over every rock, but there has to be some guidance around to help you navigate all that stuff to wind up on center court 6 years later at Wimbledon. So, yeah, I mean, Alcaraz, one of my colleagues signed him at 12 years old. So these special phenoms, they do have those rare situations, but it's not something we're seeking out. We prefer to sign somebody a little later, even, knowing a little bit about yourself. You were a late bloomer. I think at 14 years old, I understand probably people weren't thinking you were going to be Andy Roddick you are today. That's kind of how we would like to do it more when they're 15, 16 years old. They're a little bit more mature. You have a little bit more runway to see what's going on. But what's unique about tennis is that our great, great champions can play at a high level at a young age. I think that's what makes our sport unique and special.
And especially, I mean, you're talking about, someone that had to move in order to train, in order to have the opportunity. This isn't someone that is just living in Florida. So it is a life move. And you mentioned Yuri, and I'm curious about that relationship because I always felt like you would see him when you're watching him on TV and in the box, and he's this super, super intense guy. But Yuri has a sense of humor. Like, I don't know that anyone from the outside looking in kind of fully understood that part of it. You mentioned having beers with him. I get it. I've been around him. I always really liked Yuri, and he was always really kind to me. But like that relationship, that had to be the bedrock of where you're sitting today and able to create the success with Maria, but then also have that credibility to kind of step up and say, I've experienced this. So when you're speaking to Emma or Lee Na or whoever it is, be like, I've actually gone through this gauntlet before. But talk about that relationship with Yuri where he's kind of driving the ship, but you have to be simultaneously responsible to him and the player who's 11 that you represent.
I'm glad you bring him up because he's, besides one of my best friends in life, he really, like you said, when he was in the player box, he was a lunatic, and I would tell that right to his face. Yep. I mean, everyone saw that, but that he was doing that because he knew that's what she needed to be pushed. Behind the scenes, the guy is probably one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. He never did an interview in his life. Never did one interview in his life. Everything was about his daughter. He wanted no credit. He got paid to do it. He got offers to do everything. Never once would he ever do an interview. After she won her third Grand Slam at Australia, I think that's 2008. She won 3 Grand Slams by the age of 20. We were all getting a little drunk, celebrating, and he made a toast. And I'll never forget the toast. He made a toast. He said, just like this, he said, baby, we won 3 Grand Slams by the age of 19, and I'm done. And he never came to a tournament after that date. And the reason why he said is he did everything he could for her. He pushed her as much, and he was getting to the point, she was 19, that it was starting to affect their relationship. And he was put Michael Joyce in place. He saw this happening 18 months in advance. He knew that he couldn't push her anymore, and he accomplished everything that she did, and he stepped away. He never had a credential ever again since 2008 till she
not a credential. That never went to any tournament.
Never went to any tournament.
Wow, I don't know how that story isn't.
And here's a guy. Here's a guy that put his relationship with his daughter before everything else. And you would never think of that because he was so.
I'm glad you're saying this.
He's so crazy in the box, but he's smart. He's calculated, and just did everything for her, and never wanted the relationship. The relationship between father and daughter was more important than anything. And for him to walk away when she won her 3rd Grand Slam and saying that, I've done everything I can for you, and never to a tournament again. Now, he would come to training weeks when she wanted and would talk to him on the phone, but that was it. And you know how many parents are hanging on for dear life all the way to the end.
Oh, man.
Making it about them. There's so many tennis parents that it's about them. And here's a guy that,
well, there's a lot of tennis parents that make it about them without the life sacrifice of moving heaven and earth when you don't have 2 nickels to rub together to move to the other side of the world just for an opportunity. So if anyone would have had the right to grandstand a little bit, it might have been Yuri. But yeah, I always it's weird because you kind of see there are certain characters in tennis where they present very well, and behind the scenes you kind of roll your eyes, or there are certain characters in tennis that are viewed as like intense, or you go through you take a look back and all the really intense father figures of phenoms kind of get lumped together. Yuri I was stunned at how nice, easygoing, personable, I mean, you could take a joke. When I got to know them, I was surprised by that. I don't feel like that got represented enough. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And I didn't know that was like kind of a firm cutoff, and kind of that takes something. You quickly alluded to the 2004 Wimbledon. Obviously, I remember watching it. But 17-year-old Maria goes out. Wimbledon final. I was on the wrong side of too many of them. She made it look real easy that day, right? Like, it's just, you walk in and there's a pressure set and you're playing against simultaneously the best player in the world and the best grass court player in the world. Probably Serena's best service as well.
Yeah.
Maybe. Goes out. I think the score was 1-4 if I remember correctly. But talk to me about your life 2 months before that match and then 2 months after that match.
Yeah, 20 years this year that she won the Wimbledon, and her life changed, obviously, and then my life changed. So she went into that tournament seeded 13 at 17 years old. So it wasn't like an Emma Raducanu that came out of nowhere. I don't think people thought she was going to win Wimbledon, but a couple weeks before, she got to the quarterfinals of the French. The year before, she got to the round of 16 of Wimbledon. So our mindset as the agent was like, something big's going to happen. And we're getting a lot of offers, but we're going to stay patient. That was kind of, the biggest thing with Yuri. You got to understand at that time, they weren't making that much money. They probably owed people money. Money was coming in, and we were able to go to Yuri and like, listen, like, let's stay patient. Another thing that Yuri doesn't get enough credit for, he was so smart in business. He believed in his daughter. So when we would come to him and say, listen, let's stay patient, because if something big happens, we'll make more money. He's like, I'm all in. I don't need to change my lifestyle now. So 2 months before Wimbledon, everything was about development. Everything was about giving her the best environment, coaching, trainers, physio, to be able to go deep and win a Grand Slam. And we were locked into that, turning down all sorts of deals and offers. Almost had a little security blanket around her to just really develop, because at that time, she really was thrusted in, starting to become this next superstar. That whole, is this the next Kornikova thing? We were fighting a lot of that. And we were just really trying to keep things as simple as possible for her to be able to continue to be great. She was so driven. And people would see that on the court, how driven she was, but she was really driven. Everything, she woke up every day and she was thinking about tennis, when she's taking her nap, what meals she's eating, and everything. So managing her was just kind of keeping that as consistent as possible, keeping her life as easy as possible. Boom, then she wins, and just everything changes. Thank God. There was no social media then. I always tell people, always ask me to compare Sharapova winning to Emma. Emma won during this social media world was crazy. Like, information was going so fast. At least Emma just couldn't catch her breath, or anybody around. The things were flying so fast. At least when Maria won, you could kind of catch your breath a little bit. You can, put things in order and everything. I'll send back to Yuri. When she won, he made us go to the bank, the bank on site at Wimbledon, to get $10,000. You can't travel with more than $10,000. He took $10,000 cash and went with his buddies in the mountains and partied for like a week, and left me with her. He left the next morning, 10 in cash, and went to party with all his friends.
Wait! You say the mountains? Like, is he like sleeping in a tent, or like is he in a hotel, or what is it like?
He just said, "I'm going meeting all my buddies that I grew up with in the mountains, and we're gonna party." And
wait, so does he put out, like, how does that work? Does he just put out the bat signal? He's like, meet me at. Is it like I'm curious. I'm curious about things that will be boring to everyone else.
All my job was, I needed to get him $10,000 in cash, and he was going to party with his friends. And here, another example of a guy that just, everything he did, they came to this country, $800, spent his life sitting on the couch, slaving, everything. His daughter wins, and he's like, okay, take care of her. And he was gone with his buddies.
Give me 10K. I gotta go hike a mountain, get smoked. I love it. That's great. So okay, now let's. So you've been turning deals down. The I can't get the Yuri of things out of my mind. I'm obsessed with it. You've been turning deals down. Obviously, price goes up. Interest is still there. Were you when you, because you've kind of hit lightning in a bottle numerous times,
yeah,
right? Like where you've had Maria being Maria, you've had Li Na in a very, very, very specific market, and then Emma coming out of nowhere. When that happens, and I'm curious if this was the case the first time with Maria, and if you've changed the way you've gone about it, or you've kind of stuck to the same pattern. Are you concerned about just picking up 2 massive deals or 3 massive deals and then kind of waiting on the rest? Obviously, scheduling is a huge part of it. If some company comes in and wants to back the truck up, but they need too much time, walk us through kind of that balance and where your priority lies when you kind of have 100% of the leverage, which is, certainly a moment in time, right?
So at the time in 2004 when it happened, obviously Yuri wanted to get paid now, all right? Everything he was like, okay, I want to be paid. So, and the way he would talk, he's like, okay, I don't want to hear any more BS now, show me the money, basically. So the only person at the time that was dealing with something similar was Tiger. So I went, Mark Steinberg was a colleague of mine and worked on the 13th floor. So I came back and spent a lot of time with him to figure out, how does Tiger do it?
That's smart.
Tiger had a lot of deals. And so how is Tiger doing it? How is he managing? The key is, how do you maximize your earnings but still win? So Tiger was doing that. So I spent a lot of time with Mark Steinberg, and Tiger was doing these. What he liked to do is take weeks of the year to do his shoots. And what Tiger was doing is so he would take 3 weeks and he would do 5 shoots a week in those weeks. So it kind of came to me okay, that's pretty good. We got to manage weeks. So what I actually ended up doing is I rented a meeting room in a hotel, and I blew up the calendar for the year. And I laid the calendar on the table, and I did this without Maria, and I brought Yuri in, and I said, okay, do you agree that Maria shouldn't be doing any 8-hour photo shoots during a tournament? And he looked at me. He looked at me
obviously.
like, "Are you an idiot? Of course, she's not doing any photo shoots. She's going to focus on the tour." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." And I took a line during the week, and I put the line through. So every tournament week, I put the line through. Then I said to him, "Do you agree with me that 1 week before every tournament, she shouldn't be doing any 8-hour photo shoots?" He's like, "Are you an idiot? Of course she can't do a photo shoot a week before the tournament. She's got to get ready for the tournament." I'm like, "Okay, I just want to make sure." So the week before every tournament. Then I said, "Do you agree 3 or 4 days after each tournament, she's dead tired, she's exhausted, she shouldn't be doing 8-hour photo shoots because she can get sick?" He's like, "Yes, I agree." "Okay, what's your point?" Basically, he said. So we did the exercise.
So we have 3 weeks left.
Basically, we figured out that she has 16 days a year that will not interrupt her becoming a great tennis player. And I said, "Do you agree with that?" He's like, "Yes." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Go make me as much money as you can on 16 days. So we took those 16 days and we, so all of a sudden, if you have, I'm just making this up, but let's say Canon, you remember she had the Canon deal.
Yeah.
If Canon's paying you $2 million, but they need 8 days, that's too many days. So you need to do that $2 million for 2 days or 3 days. So we just were playing with 16 days the whole time. And we went and we did as many blue chip deals as we could with the best brands. And we kept everybody into them. We never went above 16 days. Now, she could have made $20 million more if we added 4 or 5 more days, but he stayed true. And I think you'll see after she won, she had a crazy amount of deals. But she kept winning. She won the championships that year. She was top 5. She won her second Grand Slam at the Open. So I think that strategy, credit to Yuri again, because he could have easily said, I want more. Credit to Maria buying in. And so that 16 days I brought to Emma and I brought to Lina. And I just kept that all the way. I kept that all the way through. Because when you say it just makes sense, right? So,
well, it's also, I think the genius in what you did was not making it a hypothetical conversation. Well, the actual visual of seeing where it's going to land, like as you're actually crossing these out and I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, she's between 2 and 3 weeks. Once you kind of start doing that, it makes a lot of sense. But my question is, so Canon comes with some crazy offer. They need 8 days. Did you basically start looking at these deals as like, okay, a price per day as opposed to like a yearly thing, right? So if you have 16 days and if someone has a lesser offer, but they want 2 days versus Canon who wants 8, is Canon out? Or you just drill them down, or both?
Well, it's a fine line because you have to give Canon what they need to make the return on their investment.
Yeah.
Because the key to when you're doing the deals that I'm looking at it is, we're going to do a 3-year deal, but if I'm a good agent, I got to turn that 3-year deal into a 10-year deal. And the only way to do that
just the first look.
is to be a good partner and to be able to over-deliver on what and Maria was a genius at that. So we would have 2 shoot gates and 3 appearances, but if she could do 5 appearances, she would do it without asking for more money, with the mindset as I'm being a good partner, and when it comes to renew, I'm going to be able to get more money and keep doing it. So as the agent, you're hammering them on the days, but if you hammer them too much and you can't give them what they need to have success, then the partnership's not going to last. So you have to do the dance. Now also, with Maria, if you're doing these blue chip brands, you want to make sure all the brands are playing in the same sandbox together. I'll never forget one of my toughest conversations with Yuri was, you remember the Acne Proactive? They offered Maria something crazy like $3 million a year for 5 years. And so we had blue chip brands, and all of a sudden I have to go to Yuri. And as the agent, everyone needs to understand, at the end of the day, the parent's making the decision. We bring the offer, we bring it to the family, we give our recommendation, and the family is making the final decision. A lot of people think that Max Eisenbud's making the decisions. I wish it was the case. It's never have met a client where actually Lina will let me make a decision. But so I have to go to Yuri and tell him we're turning down $15 million. I mean, he's going to look at me like you're crazy. But I tried to explain to him, you just can't take this poor brand. I hope the Proactive people aren't listening. They just don't play in the sandbox with, Tag Heuer and Nike and all these other things. So again, I was able to go to Yuri and say, listen, we're not.
It's not that it wasn't, the brand made no sense with what you guys were presenting.
It's not a brand.
Like zero.
Fit. And we will get back in the beauty business at another time, and we'll do which we did down the road. But again, here's a father who came here with no money and just bought into what we were doing. We're going to make all the right decisions. We're not going to be so motivated by money, and we're going to build her brand so her brand is strong, and all the way through her career. And credit to both Maria and Yuri to be able to turn that down.
Yeah. So you're saying like, Yuri makes the decision. I know you all well enough to know how intelligent Maria is and how aware she is of the surroundings, but also her own value, right? At a certain point, when did she start being kind of the go-to for your conversations? I'm assuming you guys did the pickleball deal 3 weeks ago. I'm assuming that Yuri didn't sign off on that.
No, that's funny.
Like, at what age did that switch?
He brought her in early, probably when she was 16 or 17.
Wow, that early.
With bringing her in. Now, he was still making the decisions.
Yeah.
He was bringing her in when we were doing that Nike deal around that time, educating her, getting her opinion. He would make the decision. I would say, and she really trusted him. I would say that even until she's 25, 26, that he was
Wow.
very involved in, she was making the final decisions, but she would like to have her father's opinion.
Oh, that's interesting. So talk me through, because it's weird. I know specifically, because we're playing at the same time, we're, in the same circles for kind of moment in time. I understand the relationship that you have with Maria and Yuri. That makes sense to me. How different do you have to act based on different relationships, right? Like I know I was different than, someone else that Ken may have represented, probably a little bit more difficult. But how do you have to kind of balance the way that you present information to different clients, and what's that balancing act, and what's the learning curve with that?
Yeah, I mean, so listen, I've been lucky. So I had Maria at 11. I signed Madison Keys when she was 13, Ayla Tomljanovic when she was 13, and then Li Na. So I had all those girls kind of at the same time. When I signed Li Na, I went to Maria first to ask permission.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, listen, I don't think this is a conflict. I signed her when she was like 35 in the world. So maybe Maria didn't think that she was going to get to 2.
She's like, that's a nice side. That's a nice side project. I'll be here singing the greatest hits.
I tell a funny story that I actually saw Li Na for the first time ever, laid eyes on her at the 2006 U.S. Open. Maria beat her in the second round. And I was watching. I'm like, this girl's unbelievable. Like, I remember after the match, Maria killed her, running as fast as I can to the player lounge to figure out like who this girl is and how do I sign her. And
wait. But you said Maria killed her. Why were you so like? What stuck out? If you see someone get drilled, why all of a sudden are you intrigued?
She was just the way she moved, the way she hit the Chinese market. I was just like all in,
okay.
All in.
And so you talk to Maria, and Maria says, "Yeah, go have fun with your person who's 40 in the world."
Basically, well, it took me 3 years. I finally got the meeting in 2009 U.S. Open when I signed Li Na.
That's good timing.
But then I went to Maria and I'm like, listen, and she was cool. She's like, if this is good for your career, like, I'm all for it. As long as you feel like it's not going to be a conflict, and all for it. And then Li Na went crazy, went from like 40 in the world to 2 and all that kind of stuff. But the girls, I'm not going to lie, I was always stressing out when the draw, like I didn't want them to play each other.
Yeah.
I didn't want them on the same day. I didn't want to, it was uncomfortable, but both girls were amazing. And at the end of the day, Maria really cared for me and did it because it was good for me. And that's pretty special.
So we've mentioned like the opportunity of the Chinese market, especially at that moment. I mean, it was you're trying to get someone to break out. Who's going to win a major first is a huge deal. Talk to me about the way that looks in practice, what the opportunities are, what are the things that are easier dealing with that market, and maybe some of the things that are more difficult.
So I never went to the French Open for many years because I just didn't like it. And
me too.
And actually, Maria and 2011 French Open, Maria and Li Na played each other in the semifinals. And thank God I wasn't there. I made everybody leave my house. I didn't want nobody in the house, and I couldn't watch, and it was tough. It's like having your two children play each other. Obviously, Li Na won that match and then went on to win the French Open. 116 million people in China watched her play that match.
So you're saying there was an opportunity?
There was an opportunity there. So if you want to back up a little bit, if you don't mind, probably on my tombstone will say that I was the first agent to get Nike to allow patches.
Oh my God! What did I tell you, Mike? So I was with producer Mike before we sit here, and I kind of go through everything about an hour before. I like it to be fresh in my mind, and I was gonna bring it up. I'm so mad. It's literally written right here. So I explain. So you don't have to explain to the audience. When you sign with Nike, right? One of their big things is no patches. Like you can't do it. You can't have like you can always tell, like, there's like the Sharapovas and there's like the Federer Nadals, and then there's guys like me who kind of get deals, but then we like to add stuff also to like supplement our the fact that we can't hit a backhand. But I said, Max, I literally had this written down. I want to know that process, because Max, all of a sudden, Li Na wins, and or maybe I don't know, did she have it before she won? But he was the person who, like, the Trojan horse, Mercedes patch on a Nike shirt. Please tell me all about this. This was like my nerd out question of the day.
Okay, so I'll tie it all up if you don't mind.
Okay.
So
yes,
when I signed Li Na in 2009, I had this huge presentation. I met her at the Radisson Hotel meeting room. I had this huge presentation. I worked days, weeks on presenting to her. She comes in the room and she's like, you made Sharapova rich. I'm going to sign with you. That's all she said to me. I'm like, you don't want to see the presentation? She's like, no, I don't have any money. The Chinese government took all my money. Now I have a new deal with the Chinese government where I get to keep 80%, and I just need to make money.
She pays 20% to the government, just off the top.
Before, they took all her money. She was only making 20%. Then she was able, on her own, without me, she had a new deal. She threatened, it's a long story, she threatened that she was going to not play the Olympics, and she did this all on her own. And
because was that the 2008 in Beijing?
Yes.
Oh, she had leverage because the Olympics were in Beijing.
So she told them that she was going to retire and go to school. And then then she was able, all on her own. But the reason why they did it, they thought that she would just, because you got to remember, in the Chinese, they did everything for her: visas, passports, travel. She was in the Chinese system since she was 10 years old. So they figured that she would never be able to figure it out on her own, and she would just come back to them. So she was able to get some funding from some person she met in Hong Kong, and then she, through Nike China, got the meeting with me. And then she basically was like, okay, I'm only signing with you because you made Sharapova rich. I have no money. I have 3 knee surgeries. I just need to make as much money as possible, and I think you did a good job, so I'm going with you. So then, okay, so I'm like, my head is spinning. You don't understand. Like, I'm like, did she just say she's signing with me? It was bizarre. Okay, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to work now. She's 40 in the world, and Sharapova was out with shoulder surgery, and Serena was out, and Safina was number 1, and women's tennis was a little bit of a mess. So I, in normal aging, you take over a player, you ask them to send you the contracts, right? So she's with Nike. Nike's paying her $50,000. I'm like, oh my God. So Nike helped me set up.
Wait. So under her previous deal, if Nike's paying her $50,000, she's taking home $10,000.
Correct. And the fact that they're paying $50,000 is crazy. She's still Chinese and 35 in the world. I mean, 50 is not the right number. But then it's a little uncomfortable because Nike's the one who helped me set up the meeting. Okay, so...
Well, that's their fault. That's not uncomfortable for me. You're a better human than I am.
So then I sign her, and then I come to Nike, and they're like, okay, they know that I saw the contract. They're like, okay, what do you want? They're like... Okay.
They started... He goes in the meeting, they have helmets on.
Yeah. They're like, okay, what do you want? And I'm like, actually, I don't know what I want. Let me go to the market and see what she's worth. I'll come back to you guys. So at the time, all these Chinese brands were coming. Li Ning, Peak, all these Chinese brands were happening. So I flew to China, and we have an office there, and I started meeting, and I found out that there was a Chinese brand that basically wanted to pay her like $1.2 million. So 50 to 1.2 million. I'm like, okay, this girl's going to love me. Okay. So I go to meet her, and I tell her the great news. And she says to me, I want to stay with Nike. I'm like, what do you mean you want to stay with Nike?
You had one rule, make me rich. You had one rule.
That's exactly right.
You gave me one rule.
Yes. So I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. Okay, so I go to Nike, and I'm like, okay, the market tells me she's worth 1.2 million. They're like, there's no way we're paying her 1.2 million. So this is where I had the leverage. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to pay me like half, and you're going to give me patches. And it's going to be China, and you're going to be able to justify to the whole world that you're only doing patches in China. There's not many other players, and this is how you're going to be able to justify it to Sharapova and Federer and Nadal and blah, 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 blah. So they said, deal. I called our lawyers. I'm like, I don't care.
That's unbelievable.
Before somebody finds out in Nike that they agreed to this contract needs to get signed in like 24 hours. Okay. So now Lena is happy. We got patches. And the first thing she says to me is, how much can I get for the patches? Normal question. So I said, I don't know. I'm going to find out. So I go and I find out that the market, like each patch is like between 250 and 300 grand. I come back to her and I tell her 250. She's like, that's amazing. You're the best. I said to her, listen, we're not taking 250 or 300. Okay. We're just going to stay patient. You're playing good tennis. Women's tennis is a mess. And she wouldn't talk to me for 6 months.
No, that's bullshit. She just turned down 1.2.
Yes, but
you lose that credibility.
What?
You can't know. You gotta stay consistent, Lena.
Wouldn't talk to me for 6 months. I could only speak to.
Do you think she didn't talk to you for 6 months? Do you think any of that was your personality?
No, I think that she.
No.
She tells me now. She tells me now that in her whole life, she thought I was tricking her. She didn't think, nobody ever believed in her like that. It's pretty sad that she didn't think that, she thought I was either tricking her or
the deals weren't real.
I wasn't telling her the truth, or she couldn't believe that I believed that we need to stay patient because she can make more money.
So you had the ability to negotiate a patch before it actually showed up?
Yes. So it was 250, 300. Then the next year she gets to the semifinals of Australian Open, loses to Kleisters, and she comes off the court and she says, you were so smart. How much can I get for the patches now? I said, I don't know. Let's go check. Come back. It's like $750 to $1 million for the patch now. I come to her and I said, we're going to stay patient. We're not doing it. Then she thinks I'm crazy. She's okay. Then she wins that thing, and each patch was $2.5 million.
Unbelievable. So she's smart. Well, not smart, but she wanted to stay with Nike. So 1.2 turns into $5 million.
Yeah. Plus, obviously, the bonuses, that's huge bonuses she had with Nike for once she moved up the rankings and all that kind of stuff. So
then Nike, they're big on like the bonus structure. So like you win a slam, it's X, and you win the ranking bonus, and they
if you're top 5 in the world and you're wearing Nike, you're making they're paying more than anybody else. And the Grand Slam win bonus is bigger than anybody else. But I just felt in the patches, like I got these patches, like we're not giving it away, and she's playing good tennis. Now I can't like think that she was going to win. I just felt very good that if the shit hit the fan, I was always going to be able to go get that money because the market was saying that. So why don't we just stay patient? And I just saw what's happening in the women's tennis, that, Serena's not there and there's an opening and somebody else is going to win. And then boom, once she won, we got Mercedes, and we could have done 1 million patches. And then from that moment, obviously my relationship with her changed because the trust from that moment. And it's just a very, very special relationship that I have with her now.
God, I love that story.
It's her birthday today.
Oh, well, happy birthday. I'm sure she's not listening. I saw, now what's her kind of day-to-day now? Because she's been off the tour for a minute now. I saw her, she was down in Australia. Like, what is her day-to-day existence in China when she travels? How interested is she still in the game? What's kind of her day-to-day and interest level?
So she went back to get her college education. She, I think equivalent to like a master's. She went back to school. She's got 2 kids. Before COVID, her business was very, very strong. She was making a ton of money in a lot of different projects. COVID obviously slowed things down in the market. And then she kind of enjoyed not doing much and just being a mom. And all her focus is, with the kids now. And now she's more selective on what she's doing. She wanted to bring the kids to Wimbledon last year, so she did that. She came to Australia without the kids. She wanted a little break. She follows all the Chinese tennis players, but she's not interested in coaching. She's very interested and focused on being a mom. She made a lot of money now. And she does a lot of charity work. She likes to do a lot of different stuff. She doesn't have her own foundation, but she likes to give back, pick and choose where she does it. Amazing girl. And I've been very lucky to work with some strong women and just be a part for the ride.
And I'm guessing her relationship with any sort of government interference is like she's an icon. She is it. Like, so it's like I kind of just your opinion matters less now, and I can do what I want. And that's good business for you.
I don't know if anyone can do what they want there, but she's an icon and a hero, and once she won, then she was part of the system. You know what I mean? Gosh,
it's so
you know
crazy.
how it is.
I don't, which is why it's so fascinating. Like that's just, I mean, what you said about the 50K, and then I mean, they're taking an 80% rake on everything. That's unbelievable. Like, so question for you, and then we'll get on to kind of the next phase and maybe the Raducanu of things. Do you believe that her deal wouldn't have changed? So you talk about proximity to Maria, that being, this crazy life event that, you were kind of present, willing, motivated, and something good happened. If the Olympics are not in Beijing that year, do you end up representing Li Na?
I think she retires if the Beijing Olympics weren't there, because the way she described it to me was that her frustration was that the CTA would not give her any coaching. So she got to 35 in the world with no real coaching, and she kept losing to all the girls, losing and having the knee injury. And she's just like, unless I can get like real Western coaching, I'm never going to beat these girls. So I'm going to retire.
Oh my goodness. So it's just a matter of like some decision that's made in some room in 1996, and all of a sudden that's just the ripple effect. Crazy. I want to fast forward because that Li Na segment blew me away. I knew a lot of the Maria stuff. I didn't know the Li Na stuff. That was cool. And I'm glad you mentioned the patch, because that's the part I was obsessed with. I told him how like basically Max made me believe in unicorns. is what happened. Talk to me about this Raducanu phenomenon that happens over 19 days in New York, and qualifier, no one knows who she is. And then 19 days later, like you talk about Maria in the process, and she's a phenom at 11. You feel it coming 3 months before. You guys are already preparing for her eventually being a Grand Slam champion. And stop me if I'm putting words in your mouth at any moment. Raducanu is not that way. She went to regular schools, wasn't someone that was talked about at 11 years old. And then this happens, and with the social media, walk me through that journey before we kind of get to where we are currently with Emma.
Okay, so I mean, that's just, again, I've been fortunate in my career to have 3 kind of events like that everyone's a little different. And Emma's was just, I mean, it's hard to put in words. I mean, you're literally booking flights for her to go home before the first round of the main draw. And you're looking at what challengers she's playing leading, the next week. Like, I remember looking at her schedule that I had of all the challengers and where we can get wild cards and everything. So, I mean, you're not prepared for it. And it was just amazing for tennis and everything. So, I mean, we were just enjoying the ride until like the quarters. And then once she got to the quarters, I said to my team, like, we need to get our shit together here. Like, this is like, it's like, this is happening. Like, this is like happening. So we need to like start preparing, like, like what if, So a lot of brands. So now all the brands, people are wanting to go. So we got pretty organized with our sales team of like, okay, like, let's try to get some brands out to the US Open to like watch this happening, get to see her play.
What does that mean? You call someone somewhere and invite them as your guest?
Yeah. So we have the way we're set up is, so we have the agents who represent the players, but then we have a couple kind of sales and marketing guys who work in the tennis division that their sole purpose is to sell our tennis clients. And their job is to have the relationships with all the decision makers at the brands. So Tom Chapman is, my colleague who's responsible for that. And, we'll get on a call. I'm like, okay, Tom, who are all the brands? A lot of people think like when it happens, you win, we're just sitting and waiting by the phone. Any brand that's like calling us is usually not the brand. We're identifying which brands we want our clients to be associated with. We have relationships with them. We're calling them and seeing like, are you guys watching Emma Raducanu? I'm just saying, let's just call it. She ended up with Dior. So let's just say we're called Dior and we're like, are you watching this? Why don't you guys come out and watch? So we'll identify maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 brands and we'll start inviting them. We have a suite. We're entertaining them. They're watching the matches, kind of gating, what they think of everything. And then from there, we just, we start putting everything together. Now, now we have our fashion team. People don't realize we're thinking about if she wins, what she's going to wear. That's important. I know that sounds.
I hope you're not making those decisions, obviously. Max. I've seen you dress.
Obviously, but as the quarterback, my job is to get those right people. So, as she's making the run, she's not thinking about it. But after she won the final, she had like 7 or 8 outfits waiting for her, and she got to pick which one. But our fashion people were putting that all in place, before. So I'd say quarterfinals is when things are really starting to like, okay, wow, this is going to be something crazy.
And she obviously does it. And it's like they were fighting, like her and Layla were like fighting for the Cinderella story. Like it was, Emma had her own thing, but it's not as if she was going up against, it's not as if, like, I'll use this as an example. It's not as if the first time Naomi wins, it's against Serena, right? So there's its own pressure set when you're not the underdog. She's not Maria who goes out in 04 and is fighting Ali, right? I mean, it's a different kind of pressure set. So she wins that, and then tell me how the wake of that is different, because you kind of mentioned it quickly, than it was in 04 when Maria did it.
I mean, it's just only way I can describe it is just like time, I mean, just everything was moving so fast. People calling, people making comments. The Chinese, she spoke Chinese. One of the things that was important to me is that she wasn't leaving the site unless she did an interview in Chinese, so people can see that she can speak Chinese.
That's so smart.
Okay,
That's so smart.
I made our PR people, I was trying to stay out. I'm like, she does not leave this site without speaking Chinese, So, and that's opened up just a whole nother avenue of who she is and the dynamic of all that kind of stuff. So,
I should have learned another language, Max.
Yes.
Damn it. Idiot.
So these are all the things as the agent, when you talk about behind the scenes, that we were thinking about, and other people have other ideas, and that's what there's a tournament happening that you yourself won, and then there's another tournament happening, and I'm sure your people were doing the same thing for you, preparing. You had a great team around you. They maximized all the stuff for you and all the things that you did. And as a player, you're just focusing on that. And I'm sure it gave you comfort that you had a great team behind you that are thinking about, and listen, we don't always get it right. But our job as an agent, I try to surround myself. We have a lot of really smart people, experts in all different phases, and we're all going back and forth and seeing what's best and then presenting it to the client.
I had this question written down, and I don't know the right way to ask it, and so I'm just going to. How are we supposed to cover Emma, right? She's this enigma in this story that had this unbelievable run, but maybe it was 3 years sooner than she should have. Maybe the process hadn't taken hold yet, and now we're kind of watching her. It's weird to watch someone learn the ropes of what they're doing, but also have won a Grand Slam tournament, right? And so she's, and obviously she speaks Chinese, is like amazing to listen to. has this star quality, was the darling of Wimbledon. People forget that she was the darling of Wimbledon a couple months before that U.S. Open run. How are we supposed to cover her? Do I cover her with the critical eye of someone who was 10 in the world and won the U.S. Open? Or am I supposed to cover her as someone who's still figuring out what they're doing because she was in school 4 years ago?
I think it's a really good question, and thank you for asking. I think overall, I think the media has done a really good job, especially the British media, because that's not easy. I would say that I just think people should not be malicious. I think anything else is fair game. If you want to rip her serve, or you want to rip that she hasn't won 3 matches in a row, but I think just don't be malicious to her, because the girl did everything backwards. She skipped every step. She won the U.S. Open.
Amazing.
She went to the next tournament. She didn't even know where the player lounge was. She didn't know where the practice courts were. She didn't know anything where anything was.
Well, the stat was, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, and if I'm off, it's like barely off. She had won more matches. Listen to this, that she won more matches in that tournament than she had ever won on tour up until that point, right?
Yeah, she never played any tour. So I just ask people
7 matches in that tournament. I think she'd won like 4 before ever on tour, something like that.
Yeah. So I just think if people are just not malicious, and I don't think being tough on her or critical on her like any other player, but she's still figuring it out. It was very hard what she did. But she's a really good tennis player, and I think she's going to figure it out. And I will tell you that once she gets second week in a tournament, she's not going to be afraid to win it. Where there's a lot of people that are afraid to win it, I think she showed her nerve and what she did, and that champion quality that I believe you can't teach. That it's going to happen again for her. And to answer your question is just don't be malicious.
Yeah, it's so strange because I don't know that I've ever had to I'm normally pretty quick to an opinion. I say I have strong opinions held loosely. I'm open. I'm certainly open to walking something back because I'm just plainly wrong. And with her, it's so hard because producer Mike and I, along with Jon Wertheim, we'll talk through what goes into the show, what's interesting, what's not. And it was last week, I saw some British rag, and it was, Emma Raducanu at a party 2 days before she plays her first round. I'm like, wait a minute. She was at one, she's a wild card, I think, at this point. So, if you're a wild card, it's like, okay, I'm asking you for direct entry into a tournament, which your ranking does not get you into. But whenever you take a wild card for the history of time, you have to give something back to the tournament. Now, normally it's like, I'm 17. What does that mean? I'm not a name. I haven't won the U.S. Open at that point. So I'm participating in clinics, right? Or I'm, hitting with a sponsor's kid, or God, who knows what it might actually be. But they're like, she's out partying. I'm like, no, she went to an appearance that was probably, the reason why maybe I'm projecting here, but it's not out of bounds. Like she went to this thing, took a picture sitting down, no drink in hand, no nothing. I'm like, party. I'm like, the headline's impossible.
Yeah.
And then, and then it's like, how do we cover it? Because then 3 days later she loses, and it's not the greatest match. And she's talking about how she hasn't played outdoors enough. And I'm going, you just spent 2 months in Australia. Like so I don't know how to cover her, because in one aspect, I'm like, this is completely unfair. And then the other one, I'm going, like the same questions that you've probably been asked about. I don't know what the focus is as far as coaching. I don't know what's happening when. I don't know, and so it's one of the stranger things that I've ever had to really think about. All the while, every time I watch her, I cheer for her, because she is such a great story and such an outlier in tennis, where my entire life I've been in this game, and I've never once in my life seen something that happened the way it did in New York. It was just one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
I think the coaching situation is something that it's hard for people to accept. And, she has a father who likes to do things differently, like other fathers. But, education is first in his world. And you see that by him, where she went to regular school, never went to an academy. And you got to celebrate that. And, he has a different philosophy about how long coaches should be and all that kind of stuff. I say to myself and I say to them, if the media is only ripping you on who your coach is and when you keep coaches, and we're gonna be in a pretty good situation. But that's how they do it. And you know, as the agent, do I necessarily agree with it? I don't. But it seems to work for her. And you know, as the agent, we can only try to recommend and say, hey, this one did it this way, but they seem to be very comfortable the way they're doing it. And I have to respect that. And maybe that changes or maybe it doesn't, but she really is a hard worker. I mean, she's really a hard worker, and tennis is our priority. And yes, people want to see that she does other things. But the way I see her work, and how smart she is, I believe she'll win more slams.
So I have one more question for you after we hit this point, but how has it changed for you? I get it with Yuri and Maria at the beginning. You're kind of new and you're fresh too, and you're living this new reality. So it obviously is Yuri's rules. Now, if we fast forward 20 years and there's something that you disagree with the Raducanu camp on, how do you know how far to go, when to punch in an opinion? That would be just like an impossible thing, because at the end of the day, you work for their family, but you may have a strong opinion about the way things go based on your experience, which they don't have at this point.
That's a really good question. It's definitely a different dynamic. I didn't have my muscles out to tell Yuri when I first started at IMG what I think he should do and not do. To answer your question, not being like arrogant, I feel like a client, this where I am now, they want me on their team to give them my opinion and their experience. And if they don't want me, there's a lot of other great agents at IMG that work with me or work for me. So I feel very confident.
Are there any good agents anywhere besides IMG?
There's not.
There's not. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thank you for setting that up.
Yeah. Sorry.
And if there are decent, then they have to have been at IMG before.
That was good. I like how there are other good agents at IMG. We'll wrap after this. Give me best day of your work life and worst day of your work life.
Best day of my work life. It's hard to say. I don't want to say the easy one where it's like when your client wins a grand slam. I think some of the things that I'm most proud of, can I twist it a little bit?
Do it. Yeah, it's your question.
It's easy to be with your clients when they're winning and when everything's going great. And I'm really proud of, I've been with Maria for 23 years and Lena 15 years and Madison Keys since she's 11 and Isla since she's 13. Like, to have those long relationships, you need to be there for them when things aren't going well. And I think that's what I'm most proud of. And those are the best days. It's easy to be there when they're holding the trophy.
Worst day of your work life?
Worst day in my work life. Without getting into too many details, the dark times with Maria. Don't need to get too into that. That was tough.
We won't go into it. I will say, I won't ask any more follow-ups about that. I will say, every time I talk about it, I say something was legal at 11:59 one night and illegal 2 minutes later. It is a different scenario, and also a lot of people make a lot of excuses. The way that you all just handled it and came forward with it and took a certain amount of ownership over it. It is differentiated. We had a chat about Simona Halep last year, and her team, they did not respond the way that you all did. And I think you did yourself a service with the way that all that went down. I know it's complicated. Max, I appreciate you giving us the time and being an open book. I love these stories. This is like, I think it's stuff like this is why we started this podcast, to kind of get a peek behind the curtain. You certainly didn't have to come on here and do it. You probably don't get any value from coming on here and doing it, but I appreciate you coming on with us and talking about all this.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate you doing a great job. I really I'm a fan of the podcast. I stumbled upon it. I love listening to you. You're real, and I have a lot of respect for you. And it's been just a great joy to watch you. I watched you beat Sampras and wondering how you weren't at IMG, and now seeing you as a family man and the number one pickleball commentator. I it's fun to watch you go through all the phases of life. So best of luck.
I appreciate you, man.
Thanks.
Thank you, Max.
Is your tennis game stuck in the Stone Age? Are you still relying on intuition and luck? It's time to enter the future with Swing Vision, the AI app that analyzes your game better than your worst critic, but way more supportive. I love this product so much I invested in it and use it myself. Say goodbye to hours of match footage and hello to highlight reels that capture your brilliance and maybe a few bloopers. Founded by tech wizards from Tesla and Apple, Swing Vision is like having a personal AI coach whispering golden nuggets of wisdom without the hourly rate. Get your free swing stick and trial at swing.vision/r/serve. Take your tennis game from good to great with Swing Vision.
Oh, you didn't think you were going to get through an episode of Served without my man Jon Wertheim, who is dressed up today. You don't look... Did you go to like a job interview or what happened?
It's big student council meeting. I had to do real work today. I could take this off if it'll make you feel better. I'm coming from a 60-minute shoot, so you've got my uniform going. Now I'm getting casual for you.
Yeah, I think that's what our audience wants. I mean, the poll this week was, do you want Jon to take his clothes off at some point during the pod? And it was an overwhelming
maybe. Happen. All right. The more data points.
So we just had, I can't wait for you to listen back, because the way this sometimes works is that I'll either do an open or a close. Jon and I have our conversation, but I don't know if Jon even hears the rest of, I don't know that he hears the Clijsters conversation from last week before it actually goes to air. Jon, I had an awesome conversation with Max Eisenbud, who went through his journey with Sharapova, how he ended up with that job at such a young age when he wasn't experienced. Basically just earned Yuri's trust, and then got into Li Na, the Chinese government of things, into Raducanu and how that differed, her winning versus Maria 20 years earlier, and the social media influences and how he chops up their community. Anyway, you're going to love it as kind of as big a tennis nerd as I am. It's a really cool conversation.
It takes two to have a conversation, so I imagine you did a nice job drawing stuff out. No, but Max has not been in that position as long as he has by not being an honest broker, and this is one of the tennis truth tellers, and I think his longevity says as much about me. Maria Sharapova did not get another agent. That's rare. Li Na did not go agent shopping, and I think that tells you everything right there.
Yeah, it was cool. I'm curious to get your feedback after. It's funny, as we're on a text chain all week with Jon, myself, and producer Mike, just trying to figure out what we're going to talk about that week. What stories are interesting? Is there a nuanced take on something that's a little different? So I'm excited for you to listen to it, because I obviously value your feedback. But you had a big week. It's not every week. I know you've had them before, but it's not every week where you write the story that's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and especially being a champion for tennis and getting it on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Tell us about the article about Novak, the general gist of it, and what were your takeaways?
It's about time Novak Djokovic, one of the towering athletes of our generation, got his own Sports Illustrated cover. So that was sort of selfish motivation. Some of this was spillover from the 60 Minutes piece we did a few months ago, and he was he's just so cool and so generous. And this is one thing that really struck. This is a really complicated taft, and I had so much material. It was sort of like, why not turn this into a Sports Illustrated story? So one thing is just to the average sports fan, right? You know this guy better than anyone. Our listeners probably have a great deal of knowledge and opinion. To the average sports fan, you pick up your magazine, you sort of vaguely know the name. Even said some people, hey, isn't he the Denver Nuggets center? There are still people that don't understand what makes this guy so extraordinary. So some of it was about demystifying Novak, explaining that some of the same traits that make him extraordinary sometimes work to his detriment, but overall, the track record speaks to itself. And then this GOAT debate, like you say, GOAT debate, and a lot of people roll their eyes. It's been going on 10 years. It's simplistic. It's kind of silly, but it's a thing. I get it. It's sports. It's competitive. There's a scoreboard. We want competition. Seems reasonable to have this conversation. And I always thought it was strange. For 10 years, we were obsessed with this. And Roger pulls ahead, and no, it's Rafa, and head-to-heads, and what should we weigh? And Novak basically in 2023 buries the conversation, right? I mean, you are a hardcore truther if you look at the math and conclude it's anyone other than Djokovic. And then it was sort of like, okay, well, is Sinner going to win more than Alcaraz? But I feel like we had this 10-year obsession, and then it just sort of died. So part of it was also to say, okay, can we at least give the guy a little credit and say he won this discussion that was going on for a decade? He's got the most majors. He's got the most Master Series titles, superior head-to-head. Like, can we at least acknowledge? We don't have to dwell on it, but at least we acknowledge he doesn't get a trophy, doesn't get a check. He is the GOAT. Next topic. So that was sort of the other motivation.
Yeah, it's weird. I've always said, like, I feel like he's the guy that broke up the Beatles, right? Like he's like tennis Yoko. Like he's the one who we didn't need. We had the rivalry. We had the lefty-righty. We had the contrasting styles. We had this, and then all of a sudden, this cyborg robot, but also someone who plays with a lot of emotion, comes in and is like, I'm not buying into the hype. Like, I am complete. You can't go through me. You can't go around me. I'm going to take the punches from these guys. And it was weird. Like, it was almost like the kind of the mainstream, not tennis centric fan was kind of mad at him for it, right? I mean, do you feel that way?
Yeah, my friend Josh Filomeno has a great one too. He said it's like he's the stepdad. Like, I'm not going with you, Mom. I'm not going.
That's funny.
Everyone's sort of had mom and dad. Here comes this third party to interrupt the dynamic. I also think, look, I mean, candidly, do I wish he had gotten vaccinated back in the height of COVID? Do I wish he hadn't had that Adria tour? I do. But can we keep things in perspective? Like, add up the pile of virtues and positive things this guy has achieved and add up the unforced error count, and it's still pretty low. And I also think that to the casual fan, they know him as the Anthony. He's the Aaron Rodgers of tennis. And you want to say, first of all, Aaron Rodgers is an asshole. This guy is not. But also, there's complexity here. And if you love the fact that he does things differently, if you love the fact that he's 36 years old and inviting you to Serbia for 2 hours without a minder to have an open conversation, you have to appreciate that there are other things he's going to do that are off script that might not be as advisable. So I mean, he's a complicated guy. He's extraordinarily bright. He never escaped me. He was doing this language in like his, sixth language. He was doing the interview in like a sixth language, and I was in my first. I just think, take a step back. Has he done everything perfectly? He has not. At the same time, this is one of the great sports figures of our generation, and it's about time people knew him for that and not for his decisions during COVID.
Yeah, it's also I think what's making this GOAT thing so weird is that we never really get anything that's like final, right? Like the Jordan LeBron debate is like, look, LeBron has left, but he played this, and there are other factors involved where it's like this conversation is largely like math doesn't care about your feelings, and math doesn't care about your vaccination status, and math doesn't care about, like, very simply, and I saw Prime Federer. It was the hardest matchup that I had ever seen, right? He was the best player that stacked up against my game type. So therefore, he's the last person I would want to play, right? For like my life on the line, he's the last guy I'd want to play. But like, you line up 3 resumes, and if you choose any of them except for this one, you are an insane human. Like it's just very simply, that's the way it is. Everything else is about preference of what you like to watch, right? You like the ballet, the artistry, or the blunt force trauma of Rafa. And I've always said what Novak does so well doesn't immediately jump off the screen to an untrained tennis eye. What Roger does very well is very obvious. It's amazing if you know tennis as well as I do, and it's amazing if it's the first tennis match you've ever watched. Rafa, the physicality with which he can play, the RPMs, his speed, the drama of when he's running something out, even the drama of his grunts, like it all makes sense where he's like, okay, this guy's like instantly, he's like this gladiatorial figure. Whereas Novak is like, he is a surgeon. He is literally picking you apart, and you have to make these huge risk trade-offs to make an impact on him, and he knows it, and it might work for a little while, but he knows it and you know it, that you're probably not going to be able to do it over the course of 3 or 4 hours. Now, believe it or not, John, most of us, large-scale debates, aren't great at nuance. We like the simple headline, and Novak's game, frankly, doesn't provide that simple headline often enough. But if you can make an argument against his numbers, you are being willfully ignorant at this point. That's what I think. Why am I wrong?
You are not wrong. I think you're totally right. I think they're two. One of them is, I always think nation of origin has something to do with that too, right? The same way Federer's skills jump out at you, right? You can be a casual fan. You can appreciate this guy's moving really gracefully. He doesn't make any noise. Nadal, this guy's doing weird things with the tennis ball, and he's a lefty, and he's got pirate pants. And Novak doesn't have that immediate jump off the screen appeal. I think some of it too is, I know Switzerland. That's where we used to go on vacation. We go skiing. They're neutral. They like chocolate, and secret is banking. I know Spain. We love paella, and we once went to Mallorca. And you say Serbia, and people say, well, wait a second, wasn't this part of Yugoslavia, but it was this breakup, but it was only a few years ago. And we always hear about the swimming pool and the UN and the bombings. Nobody really knows. The casual fan don't necessarily know the history. So I think Djokovic has suffered for that. But I just think, enough, guys. He's almost 37 years old, and he's won more majors than any other male who's played tennis. Let's take a moment to appreciate, you're right, even if it takes some complexity, even if it does take a bit of an explanation to explain to the guy next to you on the airplane why he's extraordinary, give the guy his due.
Yeah, and I'll go into it just from like a nerd out situation, and then we'll move on. I've mentioned that it's not easy to explain, but I'll try my best. Simply, his ball never gets up on the backhand side. It is below your strike zone all the time. Like, it's not as if he shanks one up and he keeps it, drives it through the court, doesn't hit it harder than anyone else. His ball flight keeps it down. His superpower of all superpowers is the ability to switch directions without risk, which means he can find the pattern and the matchup inside of the game that whenever he wants, right? He's the only person that can simultaneously switch directions on Roger, take Rafa's forehand, that lefty thing that jumps up and away, which was Roger's kryptonite, right? Up in this pocket above your head on the backhand side, step in, not only step in and be comfortable driving it, stepping in, comfortable driving it down the line and actually finding Rafa's backhand off of that ball. That is an impossible thing to do. You will not notice it as a tennis fan unless you are an absolute nerd, and he does it over and over again. And he's created this length, right? He has kind of the skill set of Andre where he can stay inside the court and kind of deliver balls to the corners, except he's 5 inches longer and his reach is, 2 feet longer, and he's faster, but he's 6'4".
Wait, keep nerding. Give me 30 seconds more of nerd out, because I love this stuff, and I think our listeners will too. You mentioned the word risk multiple times. I love that. What does it do for you on the other side of the net when you have to change your exposure, when you have to change your risk-reward calculus?
Well, it's positioning. Okay, so let's say he's playing someone like a Jim Courier, who different generations, but literally is itching to the left all the time to try to get hold of the rally with the forehand side and start distributing. Jim, if he knows that he can pump one forehand inside out, and Novak can just as easily, like with a rally pace, right? Most times when we decide to go line as tennis players, it's generally an aggressive shot. We're going there with intent. We've upped the risk. We're going bigger. We're not just rallying. He has mastered how to rally up the line, de-risk it. So therefore, he brings Jim. Jim all of a sudden can't take 2 steps to the left to start dominating. He has to respect that ball up the line. And so therefore, Jim's entire game has changed. And now there's an open avenue to Jim's backhand, which backhand to backhand is a bad matchup for Jim. He wouldn't tell you anything differently than what I'm saying. But when you have to respect both sides, if I know someone's backhand is weak and I know someone can't hit a backhand up the line, all of a sudden my court positioning shifts. I can hit forehands from that inside out corner all day. Maybe they take one up the line, but you're willing to give them that option because it's the least comfortable option that they can get, right? Novak is unbelievable at running second serves in on the body, hitting that little bunny kick out. If against me, I can't create speed on my backhand side. So he hits the little bunny kick. I'm trying to do immediately from the word go, because I know that he can distribute the ball. Let's say he hits a little bunny kick up on the ad side. I'm 3 feet outside the court, knowing that I have to create speed from the side that I don't like creating speed on, all the while knowing I have to haul ass to the other side of the court. And all this is happening, and I have half a second to make a decision. So he constantly puts you into that frame of mind of, I have to respect the bleed out, right, as well as the trauma. Like, right, there's an obvious punch. It's like someone, I was explaining it to producer Mike, but it was in regards to kind of this, but also like Roger played me his entire career knowing that I couldn't knock someone out with both hands, right? I was going to jab from my backhand side and try to poke to set up something with the right hand, right? Novak can knock you out with both hands, right? But he can get kind of straight to it, and all of a sudden you don't know what happened. Now you add in defensive skills, the opportunity he can step in on the forehand side and play it big. He can go into lockdown mode. He can decide early in the first set, I'm going to make this guy work for the next 4 hours because this person doesn't like working. They like to take pot shots. His ability to adjust, I can play 4 feet behind the baseline. I can play on top of the baseline, all the while being the best returner and the lankiest returner we've ever seen, right? He can do the chip back in, or he can kind of be on you. His second serve return that he puts on top of your feet, what are you going to do with that? There's nowhere to go. You can't create speed. You can't create angle. Therefore, you're playing back into the court, and then all of a sudden, if he has a backhand, you're not just protecting backhand. You have to protect both sides all the time. It's a mountain to climb, but on every single shot, knowing that he can pull the ripcord to either side of the court, regardless of height over the net. If he's low, he can hit it both ways. If it's high, he can hit it both ways. He can hit it through the court. He can dial it back. He can play defense. He can play offense. It's tough to solve for.
Should have written that story. That was great. And no notes, no nothing. Yeah. So he's good at tennis, is what you're saying.
I'm saying he's good at tennis, and then you add in all of the psychology and all the stuff that you wrote about in your article, and it's tough. It's a tough matchup. But listen, simply, I'll say it again: 3 resumes in front of you. There is one that is the best option. You take feelings out of it. You've never watched any of the players play. You're not emotionally connected to where they're from or what they've done or the fact that they were around when you were 13 and that's how you value nostalgia. Simply 3 resumes in front of you. There's one that you're going to take and say, this is the one that I want, and it's Novak's.
And we are in the world of sports too, right? We can argue about movie stars and rock music and writers, but there's a scoreboard. We keep statistics, so it's rough. People say, "Well, I don't ever care about the number." You're just talking about numbers, and you want to say, "Okay, he won 7 games, and the other guy won 6." Do we flip that around because one guy got to you more aesthetically? Numbers matter.
We don't care about numbers. You have to win 21 sets to win 7 matches over the course of 2 weeks. Stop it. Get the hell out of here. So you're moving to Europe between now and when we shoot our next show.
Yeah, don't get too attached to the backdrop here. Because taking my show on the road.
Oh, good. I was worried you weren't going to get any time on the road.
Yeah, I need some more air miles. No, I've done it in the last 2 years where for 60 minutes I've kind of bunched my Europe stories together and spent the spring in Western Europe. So we're headed to Amsterdam. You're welcome to spare bedroom. You're welcome to come visit.
You say Amsterdam, and in my mind, yeah, I'll come. That sounds fun. I could probably find something to do there. What do you think? No.
And Frank House?
Yeah.
You might need tickets in advance.
I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Yeah, but that's going to be awesome. I'm jealous. Not quite at that point in my life yet. We went long with Max Eisenbud, and it was awesome. I'm excited for you to hear that, as I had said. But we also coming this Sunday, we're on TV for the first time, like this little show of like.
How about that?
Like we might have more people listening than just our like direct family members.
Where we're a multimedia outfit. We want to be where the fans are. We'll come to you. You like podcasts? We can fill it up there. We also will be. You'll tell the people where they can see us, sir.
Yeah. So I've had lots of questions, and by lots of questions, I mean like 6 people on social media have asked how it's going to work with the pod, and because it's on TV, does that mean it's not going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcast? It's going to be everywhere, right? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a show that's delivered midday on Saturday in order to be formatted. Everything that we talk about is stuff that we have chosen to talk about, which is great. and then we send it over. It comes out Sunday nights on T2. Monday, I will go back in to do, because obviously we care about what happens on Sundays in tennis. That's a little important. That's when titles are won and lost. So we'll do a Racket rundown Monday, all of it, everything we do. So the Sunday show, the recap on Monday will be available at the same time on Tuesdays that you all have been listening on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. The YouTube will basically, when we release the newest tennis show, then the previous show goes up on YouTube. So our entire library of shows will exist on YouTube. So you can go catch up. And if there's something you missed and you want to hear Jon talk about geopolitical issues like we have for, like, we've gotten into, we've talked about a lot of, we didn't like dip our toes in. We kind of went into the deep end with some of our subject matter, but it will be everywhere for you. We will be on T2 this Sunday debuting. I will also be I'm calling the Netflix match with Alcaraz and Nadal. So I will be heading to Vegas this weekend. So a little Netflix in the afternoon, then hop over and check us out on T2 that evening. I think is it 7 p.m.? I think it's at 7 p.m., right? Yeah, it's at 7 p.m. And if not, then you're going to hear a weird edit where it's not my voice and Mike goes 6 p.m. But it should be 7 p.m. But Tuesday release on the audio podcast with Jon and I, and it'll be a 52-minute version of a show that'll run over the course of an hour over on T2. So what you see on T2 won't be the finished product that we release the next Tuesday. I will do a Monday morning roundup, and then we will release all of it in its entirety for your listening pleasure or despair on Tuesday mornings. But we have a TV show, we have a podcast. This is getting pretty fun, Jon.
Up and running. We're like John Oliver, and watch us on TV. We'll be on YouTube as well. The response has been really, really gratifying. I don't know about you. We're open to suggestions, aren't we? People want more geopolitical talk, less geopolitical talk, more X's and O's. Feel free to keep your suggestions coming. We read them all.
Yeah, I don't go for the nice ones. I only go to the cesspool of Twitter.
Amazing job.
I'm self-loathing enough to check the comments there. Anyways, Jon, safe travels to Europe, and so we'll catch you. We'll do our rundown so that we can deliver the show. We'll preview Indian Wells on T2 on Sunday night, so be sure to check us out there. But just because you saw us on T2 doesn't mean we haven't added something by the time it comes out on our podcast on Tuesday. Safe travels, my friend. This has been served, and we will see you on Sunday and next week.